Oh, hell no. It looks nothing like that.
She just looks bland to me.
You can see in there does not look great. That's how you know that you've messed up.
Jesus. Seems like they're over-sexualizing her.
This is what women in my video games always looked like. So why are we changing it? It's like, because it's not real, bro.
It is kind of strange when censorship in America is matching some of the censorship we're seeing in the Middle East and Muslim, strictly conservative countries. And I think that is the case of what we're seeing in the video game industry, at least, where we're having absurd levels of censorship when it comes to the female body, when we had fights over decades over the liberation of women wearing whatever they want and not being judged for it. And now we're having that judgment brought to the video game space where we're judging these characters, covering them up, and that's what we're seeing with Mortal Kombat toys that are coming out where they're covering up some old designs of the characters. You can see that with Melina here with her toy. They're covering up certain parts of her design that wasn't like that in the older versions of the suits that she's wearing. And I think this harkened back to our more Puritan culture nowadays, where even the people that support female liberation and wearing whatever you want, doing whatever you want, especially if you're doing it in a rap music video or you're related to some sort of rap hip-hop culture, you're allowed to do whatever you want, except if you're designing video games. And that seems to be the case for the developer of NetherRealm Studios, where they have been dressing up a lot of characters that had been previously done in a different way. And I think that is what we're seeing overall in the development space of video games, where we have this Puritan culture similar to what we're seeing in Muslim countries and super hyper conservative countries, where we want to cover up a lot of the females' bodies. And I think that is inching closer to this realm of what we're seeing nowadays, where everything is being covered up and everything is being concealed when it comes to feminine aesthetic or beauty. And I think that is something that has developed over time with the influence of cultures in America that are disdaining any revealing looks of female characters, if it is for the pleasure or gaze of the male attention. And I think that is the focus, male attention, and avoiding it. And that's what we're seeing in the video game space, which is predominantly focused on the male gaze, because mostly men are playing these video games. I know there's stats where people are going to say, no, that's not the case. It's not only male video game players, but that is related to mobile gaming. Yeah, 50% of gamers on mobile devices are female, but while on console games, it's over 85% male playing those games, and sometimes 90% if you just take into consideration of different consoles. So it is a space that is predominantly focused on the male gaze, and I think people resent that. They've invaded this space and now they're taking it over, demanding you cover up these particular characters. And this, we have it here happening with these toys, but this is just a small sample size of what we've seen specifically with NetherRealm Studios, where they covered up a lot of the designs of their female characters. We see this with the overall designs of new characters. If you haven't played any current games, you see this happening in Western development companies, where they take some beautiful models and they uglify their look. You saw this with the Fable trailer that came out. They took a beautiful model, they uglified her face because they feel like this is less offending to the female perspective. I think this is suggesting that uglier females are more non-threatening to female gamers, and this kind of has a psychology component in and of itself, where you're trying to create more non-pretty ugly women so women players will not feel offended by these female characters and they won't have their own insecurities brought to face because of the look of these digital characters. And it's just showing a whole host of insecurities from the people that have this perspective in and of itself, where you have to uglify beautiful women to feel secure in yourself. That is just saying you have some psychological problems of yourself, some self-esteem issues that you have to handle. But this is not being brought up when it comes to these arguments. It's usually that the male gaze is terrible, it's making unrealistic standards, but men are not having realistic standards when it comes to digital people. They're just playing a game. They're maybe attracted to the overall aesthetic. Women too are attracted to the overall aesthetic, and they play these games. And I think that's what we're seeing here. But we have this overall thought process that is pervasive in the development space for video games, where they want to plump up, uglify these characters so they're more non-threatening to female gamers. And I think that is a process that is having a backlash, because you have male gamers that are the predominant customer base that are just not responding to your gameplay or whatever you're putting out there. And we have failures like Mass Effect, in some regards Horizon Zero Dawn, because it was a lesser success than its predecessor. And I think you can have that comparison with Eastern games, where they take these beautiful models and beautify them, make them more appealing. And I think you have the process where a lot of Western gamers are more attracted to playing Eastern games because they have that aesthetic that is inviting. And that's just something a simple marketing and advertising executive from 20 or 30 years ago would understand, that the more pretty and appealing aesthetic of whatever you're presenting, the more appealing it is to the customer base. So uglifying these particular models is not going to be appealing to either men or female, and this is something that is lacking in at least the current game development space, where you have the understanding of that principle. And this growing thought process within the video game space, perpetuated by journalists, where they're saying we want more ugly females, and that's strictly not the case. And that's why we have new developers like Shift Up that are developing these games like Stellar Blade that have these more attractive female aesthetics, gaining a lot of attention, where people are going, I'm going to play this game. This has a person that I like how they look. Yeah, now I notice the gameplay, since I noticed the character looks in a aesthetically beautifying way, so I'm going to be attracted to the gameplay. The gameplay is good, and now I'm playing the game. And that's just how you sell games. It's simple marketing and advertisement. Make something visually appealing, you're gonna have the person actually give your game a chance. And I think that is the case with Stellar Blade. Even though it may not be a good game yet, people are gonna give it a chance because it's aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And that is a fact that we have lost in Western game development space, where people are not developing aesthetically pleasing characters so they can invite people to actually play their game. And I think this Korean game that just came out of nowhere is coming from an app developer that mostly focused on making aesthetically appealing games so they can make money. And that's just the way you make money in a capitalist market. You have to make things that appeal to the customer base, and if you're not doing that, you're gonna have a failure. And I think that's why we're seeing a successive amount of studios failing after one video game release, because they're not appealing to the customer base. They're trying to create a customer base, and that is just always marked for failure when you try to do something like that. And we see that often nowadays because everyone's trying to carve out their own customer base. You see this with Disney, all entertainment properties, where they're trying to make their own customer, and that is just not working out, because you got to mark out a niche customer that is not going to be able to support whatever you're selling. And we see this happening with Disney, with Warner Brothers, with the comic book industry in of itself, where they're developing things that are just not working out for the fan base. And you see this in the way they present their characters. And I think you get that uglifying process in the West, and you look at the Eastern process of developing characters. You look at Stellar Blade, the model they chose actually looks like a supermodel. It's actually someone visually appealing, and they made the character model based on this character, and people are gushing over it, and they're more attracted to play this game. And you have this simple marketing strategy and advertisement strategy that has worked for 50-60 years being implemented by basic Eastern game development companies, and it's just showing how lost the Western game development space really is. But you tell me, what do you think about the situation? Do you think the Western game development space will change their ways, or will they stick to this uglifying method? I think we're gonna have more studios like in Korea that are gonna follow this. We know Japan is being slightly affected by American political ideals, just based on their investment portfolios, the companies that are receiving loans from Western investment banks. So they have that bias being placed into their games because of departments being formed to overlook their games. But that hasn't happened in Korea. Has a more strict system that is not focused on anything other than making a profit and appealing to customers, and it is working out apparently. But you leave your thoughts, tell me what you think about the situation. Like, share, and subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.